Hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday. So, welcome back to Use NLP, the School for Excellence. And again, my name is Eran Hafner. For those who know me, for those who doesn't, my name is Eran Hafner. And today, we're going to talk about something very important for every business, which is the sales. No business can exist without sales. So today we're going to learn the 5-step sales process. Because keep in mind, if you have a structure to the way that you run your meetings, your sales meeting, in the long run, it will always serve and get better results than doing every time something different. Because once you have a system, and you know to have the freedom in the system, in the structure, okay, then you can basically get to know and to learn what are the juicy point of each client. Now, before we start to talk about the sales process, the 5-step sales process, I want to talk about something about the image of a salesperson, because it's very, very important. So one of the reasons why you may think of salespeople as being pushy is because they have an image of not listening. That's right. So the standard experience of a salesperson is a loud-mouthed, fast talker, and especially somebody who will come sell you whatever he can, not listen for you, for what you want, for what you need, and just try to sell you as much as he can. Now, that used to be okay maybe in the last century, but today in the modern world with the internet and with everything, that people are more knowledgeable and people are more educated, that will just not work as good anymore. So funny enough, even marketing strategies, okay, which are the first step of a sale is marketing in order to set up the appointment. Even marketers have changed completely the strategies they are using in order to market and in order to really touch the juicy point of the people in order to get new leads and new clients. So let's examine the word sell. Okay, the word comes from the Norwegian word, okay, selge, which it means to serve. The word sell comes from the verb to serve. So selling is really serving. Listen. And as I said before, salespeople has an image of people that do not listen. And here I want to say a point. You see, look at me, and then check if you are the same. God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. You know why? That's right. So we listen twice as much as we talk. Keep that in mind. It will help you in selling, because people like to talk about themselves. Just give them the opportunity, and that will open them. Because if you come with a pitch, no matter what your product or service is, but if you come with a pitch, it might be okay and it might catch 10% of the customers. However, if you really want to make sales and if you really want to make the bottom line bigger, you need to have more tools and more technique how to close deals, how to run a lead, how to run a sales meeting. And you must have all the elements in place. And you must have the cues also when you can move from one step to the other, because there are only 5 basic steps. Okay? So let's get back to selling is serving, okay? It doesn't matter what your product or service is, okay? I also believe that another important point is that you need to be able to see that what you are selling is valuable. Right? You need to make sure that your product or service is valuable for your client. Now, you know that it is so valuable that you need to be willing to do whatever it takes to have your client see how valuable it really is. Do you see the connection? It's not only that you believe that it's valuable. Your client must be able to see how valuable your product really is. So that knowing generates enthusiasm. And your enthusiasm, seeing that what you've got is valuable, this what much more than you are asking. Then you can ask your client to see that too. You understand? If the price will be lower than the value, or the other way around, if the value will be higher than the price you're asking, and your client will see it, they will want what you have. You will not have to sell it to them. They will want what you have. And it's much easier, believe me, I've been in sales for over 35 years. It is much easier to give someone something that they want rather than selling them something that they don't need. At least in their concept. Does that make sense? So let's talk about the 5-step sales process now. Step number 1. Step number 1 is establish rapport. Nothing can happen without establishing rapport. So the first thing that you do in any selling situation, okay, is to establish rapport. Of course you say, okay, but the rapport that I'm talking about may be more than what you thought. So let's cover and see what I mean when I say rapport. Of course, when we want to make a sale, we have to make a bond and connection with the client. Now, the question is, if he comes to me, to my place of business, or if I go to his place of business or house, depends what is my product or service, I don't want to talk to him in general about the picture that I see in the office or, the news or something like that. I want to create a really deeper rapport because you have to remember, the mind has 2 parts, actually a little bit more, but 2 main parts, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, okay? I'm sure you heard about it. All learned behavior and change are generated in the unconscious mind. So what I want is to create a bond with the unconscious mind of my prospect. So talking to him about the same trip in Thailand, if I know that he was in Thailand, that's perfect, that's very good. But what can be better? What can create a stronger bond that my client will feel so close to me as if he knows me for a long time? And therefore, it will build trust as well. So a few facts. Most communication is outside of our conscious awareness, okay? 38% of all communication is the tone of voice. Did you know that? I mean, think about it. If you listen to someone that talk very slowly and very monotone, and it doesn't really matters what is the content that he's talking about. It can be very interesting content, but let's ask ourselves, can you continue to listen like that to a lecture or to a salesman or to a presentation that keep going so slow and monotone? Of course not. How are you going to build enthusiasm? If you don't use your tone of voice, how are you going to build enthusiasm? How are you going to build excitement? Now, remember, without excitement and enthusiasm in you as the salesperson, how do you expect the prospect to be excited about your product or service? Whatever state of mind you want your prospect to be in, guess what? You have to be there first. He has to follow. And that's exactly the reason why we're talking now about creating rapport. Because 55% of the communication is physiology. So what does it leave for the words? Only 7%. 7% of our communication is made by the words we use. The rest is the tone of voice and the body language and the enthusiasm and the state of mind. Now, that means that there is a tremendous opportunity, okay, for communication outside of the normal channels. And that's what rapport is all about. You are communicating directly to their unconscious mind. Make their unconscious mind like you. Make their unconscious mind trust you. Make their unconscious mind curious about your product or service. And guess what? They will convince themselves to buy your service or product. So the basis of rapport is that when people are like each other, they like each other. And when people are not like each other, then they don't like each other. Simple as that. Now, when you like someone, you are willing to assist them in having whatever they want, don't you? And not only you, everybody is like that. And that's exactly what we want to be able to leverage in the sales process. The natural will of people to help. But this natural will is only for people they like. And you as a salesperson, no matter what you sell, service or product, you are in a position that when you knock on the door or when you make the phone call, they immediately don't like you so much. Maybe even afraid from you a little bit. They have an image in their mind of what a salesperson is. You need to change this image by listening, not by pitching, by listening. So let's speed the processing. The first element of rapport is how fast people move. How you ever notice people tend to adopt a certain speed of movement. They move in a certain speed. It has to do with how they process information, whether they process it visually, auditory, or kinesthetically. And we will talk about those three languages, okay, in a different lecture, okay? That we will talk about the three secret languages that people are speaking. Very important to know that, so you can talk the same language as your prospect. Because imagine if you speak English and he speaks French, it will be very hard to sell for him. So you must know and really have the ability to control all three languages, okay? And we'll talk about those languages in a different segment, as I said. So that means that if you are meeting with someone, for example, okay, who is highly visual and you're not quite there, okay, sit up in your chair, breathe from the top of your lungs, and be excited. Or at least act in a way that match what they are doing. On the other hand, if you are meeting with someone who is more auditory, you want to slow down a bit. Modulate your voice more. And listen. Really listen. If you're meeting with someone that is more kinesthetic, slow way down. And talk to them about feelings. Actually, change your voice tone so that it matches theirs. Really get a sense of it. What is mirroring? So matching is when I do the same as them. If you raise your right hand and I raise my right hand, that's a matching. I match your physiology or your tone of voice or your speed of speak, rhythm of speak. Whatever I can, I will match. The breathing. That's what creates rapport. By the way, matching the breathing is one of the strongest techniques. Try it with your spouse. Sit and watch a movie, sit and talk, and start to breathe the same way that they do. You will see it will do miracle, because all of a sudden you are both going to be on the same frequency of waves, and that will create a stronger bond and a stronger communication, even non-verbal one, especially non-verbal one. But that's good, because 90% of the communication is non-verbal. Remember, only 7% is the actual word that we're using. So mirroring. The second element of rapport is a physical mirroring of an individual physiology. Actually, physically copying their postures, facial expressions, hand gestures, and movements, and their eye blinking will cause their body to say subconsciously to their mind, hey, she liked me. It's undeniable to the nervous system. When you match and mirror the physiology, the tone of voice, the breathing, listen carefully, it's undeniable to the nervous system to feel, hey, they like me, I like them. And since the decision making is made in the unconscious mind, that's exactly the feeling that you want to give your prospect, isn't it? And that's before we even got to anything else in this 5-step sale process. We are still in phase 1 of creating rapport. The voice. This is the third element, is to match the voice, the tone, the tempo, the timbre, the quality of voice, and the volume. If they speak loud, you speak loud. You cannot speak low when somebody else is speaking loud, because, hey, you're not at the same vibes. You're not at the same level of energy. Come on. Wake up. How are you going to create enthusiasm if you slow down the pace? Okay? Create excitement, always. Now, we talked about breathing, which is the fourth element, is to match the breathing. Actually, pace someone breathing by breathing at exactly the same time as they do. Matching it in and out breathing. Inhale, exhale. By the way, a way to know if somebody is inhale or exhale, when somebody is talking, is always exhaling. You cannot talk when you inhale. Okay? You want to notice how somebody is breathing? Look at the chest, look at the shoulder, because you can easily notice that, don't you? Beautiful. Another thing, that the fifth element that we want to use in rapport is the chunk size. The chunk size means the size of the pieces of information in their speech. If somebody speaks a lot before taking another breath, you want to speak a lot before taking another breath as well. If somebody is taking breath every 2 sentences, then you want to do the same, because you want to make them feel comfortable around you. You want to meet them in their backyard where they feel the most comfortable to make a decision. Does that make sense? Can you really realize and understand how important rapport, matching, and mirroring is? If you do, and you really practice that, and you really learn how to create and maintain rapport with anybody instantly, you will see miracles not just in your business, you will see miracles in your life, because you will become unstoppable for everything that you want. You will be able to ask people to do whatever you want. I have to tell you a story. One time I went on Ventura Boulevard with my wife and kids. That was a long time ago when I was still married. And we went to a store where I bought something for art, and she saw a nice water fountain. It was a big sale in the store, 40% off. So instead of $700, this water fountain was only $400. She wanted to get it. I didn't have space in my car at that moment, so I said, okay, we're gonna come Sunday. And before we went Sunday, she told me, and if it's not 40% off, I'm not willing to pay $700 for that. I said, that's okay. I'm not willing to pay even $400 for that. I'm willing to pay $250 for that. So she told me, and so let's not go. It's on sale was $400. You're willing to pay $250? They will never give it to you. I said, okay. So please, if you want to come, but don't interrupt me with what I do. Just listen. You can be present, but don't talk, not to me, not to the owner. Don't interfere me with what I do. So when I came, the sale was over. So it was $700 already. Okay. So what I did, I told him, first of all, I create immediately rapport because he remembered me. I create immediately rapport. I was matching and mirroring him every step of the way, from breathing to talking to body gestures to keywords that he was using, you name it. I matched and mirrored everything. And as I talked to him, I told him, do you remember me? I was here last week, I bought the other piece and I also saw the water fountain. And then I told him that I'm willing to pay $250 for that. And I anchored that on his shoulder. And I immediately moved to talk about something else, how beautiful the stuff that he has. Now, here I did something that is calling eliciting the strategies. I asked him a simple question. What was the reason that you did such a big sale? I mean, 40% off. It's a big sale, What was the reason you did such a big sale? You know what he told me? He didn't even understand what I'm doing. He didn't even realize, okay, that what I'm getting, okay, is such a valuable information. So he told me, yeah, we did a big sale because we got 2 new containers came from the Far East, and we needed to make space in the floor, for the new stuff that we brought. I said, that's really a great reason to make a big sale. Is there another reason why you made this big sale? He says, yes. We needed cash to pay for those 2 containers. And I said immediately, you know what, that's so funny. And he didn't understand why I say it's so funny. I told him it's so funny because those are exactly the reason why I came here. So he was looking at me and saying, what are you talking about? And you see his eye blurry. He all confused because that's a light trance what I did. And I told him, that's exactly the reason why I came here. I came to buy some old stuff, to remove some old stuff from your floor so you will have place for new stuff that you brought. And at the same token, to give you cash so you will have the money you need to pay for those 2 containers. So for how much you're going to give me this water fountain right now? And I shoot the anchor that I anchored before. And he looks at me all blurry and he says, 270. He didn't say 250. 270, but listen, it was $700. The sale was over. On the sale, it was $400. I got it for 270. Why? Rapport. Rapport. Yes, I did more techniques. That's true. I did more techniques. So if you want to learn more, join our school, join our classes. You're going to learn more and more. Because those techniques that I'm teaching, they are not just for your business. They are for everyday life. They can help you with any situation. They will help you to open your mind and be more aware of what your possibilities really are. So, please remember, as you begin to use this advanced means of communication, okay, of rapport, that in another person, none of these modes of operation is right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's only pure information. They are just how people operate. To be a master communicator, you will also want to keep in mind that people are best communicated with when you communicate with them in the way that they process information. Like I said before, meet them at their own backyard. When you want to go and buy something today on the internet, If there's more than 2 clicks to the buying process, you're probably not going to buy it, right? Everything has to be easy. This is the new generation. Everything has to be easy. We have to lead them and show them exactly what to do and tell them exactly what to do. And make sure that they really process the information correctly and understand it. And if we talk to them, okay, and communicate with them in the way that they process information, that's what we learn in NLP, then guess what? They will have an urge to work with you. Because there will be nobody else that will give them the same experience. Yes. So in addition, you can match a person predicates. Okay, those are the verbs that he's using. You can match the predicate phrases. Okay, like it rings a bell if somebody says, or I have a clear image. Okay, or I have a feeling for that. So somebody talk with those phrases, you want to match and talk with those phrases back to them. Why? Because words are labels. Labels of experience. And you want the best experience that your client can experience. That's what will motivate it to take action. Does that make sense? Beautiful. So, as you start to use those techniques of matching and mirroring that we just covered and create rapport, once you have rapport and you did matching and mirroring, there's another phase called pacing, okay, which now you change your gestures, your body gestures, and you want to see that the prospect is following you. If he does, you know you have rapport, and then it means you can actually start to ask questions. Don't, by any means, start to sell your product or service or pitch for it before you ask any questions. You first create rapport. That's the first step of the 5-step sale process. And then we move to the second step of the 5-step sale process, which is step number 2. Write it down. Asking questions. This is step number 2. Asking questions. Of course, the first and second step will be going at the same time because you have to maintain the rapport. You can establish rapport at the same time that you ask questions. Okay? And I also suggest to use, and please take a pen and write it down, because this sentence that I'm going to give you right now will remove walls of resistance at your prospect. Okay? So when we come to a sales situation, of course, the other side has resistance. He doesn't really want to buy. Maybe he only wants information. But if we are here to educate everybody and not sell our product or service, then in the end of the day, we're going to end up broke, and that's not a good idea. So we need to make a sale. So even if they have resistance, we have to lower the resistance. We cannot start to pitch or sell when they have the resistance. So how do you remove resistance in a sales situation, in a business situation? That's right. There's a sentence that I want to tell you. Before we start, I want to ask you a few questions. Is that okay with you? That will help me to serve you better. Is that okay with you? Now, that sentence will remove the resistance to answer the questions. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, the resistance of a prospect, the wall of resistance are there when the meeting starts. But now I framed it that we did not start yet. I said, before we start, I would like to ask you a few questions that will help me to serve you better. And then I get his confirmation for that. Is that okay with you? Now, once he said okay, he will allow you to ask any question that you need to ask. So this is the time to reveal all the juicy point, all the information that you need in order to make the sale later. Don't forget to say this sentence. What is the sentence? Before we start, I want to ask you a few questions that will help me to serve you better. Is that okay with you? Beautiful. Ask enough questions until you can see what it is that the person will buy. No matter what your service or product, tailor it custom for them. Ask them questions that are relevant to what they are going to buy. Ask them question. As you ask the question, you should assume that they are going to buy whatever it is that you are selling. It's very important to assume that. It's very important because this is your belief. And if it's not your belief that they're going to buy your product or service, then why you're there anyway? Why do you bother? So this always has to be your assumption. And that all you need to do is to ask enough questions so that you can see how it is that they will buy it. Now, this particular process of selling is a process of asking questions and getting into a one-on-one communication with your client. You get into one-on-one communication through rapport and by asking questions. Now let's talk about interested versus interesting. Okay? When you ask a question, you need to be truly interested. You need to be interested, not interesting. Yes? The salesperson of the last century, he was a lot of talking, no listening. Wore fancy clothes, and was really interesting. He is the kind of guy you might like to have around, at a cocktail party because he was such a show. You would enjoy the show, but you wouldn't notice that you weren't too much of a friend of his because he's too much. He never seemed interested in you. He's interesting, but not interested. Now, the problem with the salesperson of the last century that are interesting but not interested was that he didn't listen. He was pitching very heavily all the way to the sale. He didn't seem that he's interested, even though he might have been, but he didn't show it. Now, the 80% rule applied to customers. Let's talk about that. If you're inside sales, retailing, or even if you are out to see your client, you should know that roughly 80% of the people you see have already made a purchase in their mind. Okay? Again, you should know that roughly 80% of the people you see have already made a purchase in their mind's eye. In order to agree to see you or come into your store, they must have already made an internal representation, of having your product or service. They must imagine having bought or signed up. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. Think about it. Would you go to a car dealer if you don't need a car? If you didn't make a decision internally that you are going to buy a car, would you go to a car dealer? Would you go to the grocery store if you don't make a decision that you need to buy something to eat or something for the house? Of course not. So remember the 80% rule that apply to customer. Now, the way to succeed at this kind of selling is to be a master of rapport and to be truly interested in the people you talk to. When I go and talk to people, they will tell me the most outrageous things, People like to talk. People like to talk. Let them talk. Be interested in them. I can run into somebody in the street, who is in any kind of business, and I will ask him what his gross sales are and what his profit margin was, how he is doing, and he will tell me. Amazing, huh? People like to talk about themselves. And if you have rapport, they will tell you everything. Now, you will want to put together a list of questions for your business. Get your questions lined up, okay? But as you know, I'm really interested in business. I'm interested in all kinds of businesses. So when I meet somebody on the street and they say, well, I'm in this business, that kind of business, I will ask, what are your cost of goods? And what is your profit? Are you profitable? Are you making money? And how many days, are you working? I'm personally interested in what they are doing. Because only after I will listen to what they are doing, what are their challenges, what are their maybe fears, what are their expectations, what are they want, then guess what? I will be able to sell them the product that really answer their need. Now, in the same way, if you're in the computer, you might ask, do you own any computer? What kind of computer do you own? Are you pleased with the speed? Different type of question that has to do with your business. Now, the results of being interested. Let's talk about the results of being interested, not interesting. When you're interested, the buyer will forgive almost anything. When you're interested and when you've gotten into rapport, the buyer will forgive almost anything. That is not to say that you should do almost anything, but the truth is that the buyer will forgive almost anything if you are interested. Because you have to understand, even today in the world of all the computer and internet, that everything is online and all of that, people miss the personal communication, the personal touch, the one-on-one, the customer service. People miss it. So be the one that give it to them, because then they will give you their business. Be interested in them. Does that make sense? Now, the way you look at it, you will probably agree that the best salespeople in the last century were really interesting. So the first two steps are to get into rapport and to ask questions. Be interested. And theoretically, the buyer will forgive almost anything. Now, in addition, okay, you're asking questions about your client. You will want to ask them, have you ever bought anything like that before that you really liked? What does that do? It gets your client making an internal representation of having bought something like what you are selling. So you associate them with a good experience of buying your product. Now, you have to understand, to do persuasions and sales, you do it in small increments. In small increments. You cannot take a person that is in fully resistant and within a few minutes make him decide to buy your product. You have to do it in small increments. And that's the reason why a sales meeting takes a long time. And the longer you do it and the longer that you maintain rapport and enhance rapport by body language, matching and mirroring and pacing, the more time you have to send up your message, and your physiology will send a message that everything is good, even if there is misunderstanding. It's only misunderstanding, and that's why we're here, to resolve those misunderstandings. Is that right? Beautiful. So during this portion of the selling process, you will want to be precise as possible. Your question should move the client towards greater precision rather than towards ambiguity. You want your client out of trance rather than in trance. Okay? There are times when it is useful to have the client in a trance. One of them, by the way, for example, when you are linking value to your product, as in step 4 in in the 5-step sale process. We'll get to that. To gain maximum specificity about what your client wants, there are a number of questions that are appropriate to use at this stage. Okay, so I want you to take a note and a pen and write down those questions. Okay. First, you ask, how is it possible that they don't have it now? I mean, they want it. How is it possible that they don't have it now, by now? Okay, that you understand what that type of question is doing, right? Good. How is it possible that you don't have it now? Is there anything that prevents you from having that? That's the second question. Did you write it down? Did you have anything that prevents them from having it? And then we'll go to the rest of the questions, so write it down. What specifically do you want? What specifically do you want? Question number 2. What will you see, hear, and feel when you have it? I will explain later what those questions does. Question number 3. How will you know when you have it? That's especially right, for non-tangible products or services. Okay? Question number 4. What will this outcome get for you or allow you to do? Now, all the questions that I give you, it depends on what product or service you sell. So you have to really be interested, not interesting, and ask the right question, not just ask all of them. Okay? I'm just giving you examples so you will know what I mean at step number 2 of the sales process, ask questions. The next questions, is it only for you or is there somebody else is involved? You need to know. Because if there's somebody else is involved, that means you are not talking to the decision maker. If you're not talking to a decision maker, you cannot make a sale. Simple as that. Simple as that. If you are not talking to the decision maker, you are not going to make a sale. So how important is to ask in the beginning of the meeting, fairly in the beginning, and to know if you're talking to the decision makers. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. The next question, where, when, and how, and with whom do you want it? Now, this question is a little bit rough. I wouldn't suggest everybody to use it. Only professionals that know how to really use this question. Where are you now regarding having that? So, for example, if it's a car, I'm ready. I know how much I have the down payment. Or if it's a car, I'm just started to look around. It's 2 different positions, of where you are now. If you already know what you want and you already have the money, or you just started to the research, right? So you as the salesperson want to know at what phase your client is. Now, it doesn't mean that if they tell you that they're not ready, just start the research. It doesn't mean that you're not going to sell them. You just know that you need a little bit different route in order to sell to those people. Okay? Because remember, if they invited you or came to your place of business or called you, that means they already made a decision to buy this service or product. Now, whether they buy it from you or from someone else, that's a different thing. But internally, in their mind, they already decided to buy. That's the reason, by the way, research shows that if somebody going into a car dealer, within the next 3 months, he will buy a car. And this is the reason why when you get into a car dealer, they don't let you out. They bring the manager and the supervisor and another supervisor, and they don't let you go until they are fully either sold you the car or fully convinced that they cannot sell you the car. But they will waste a lot of your time because you are a prospect and they want to do whatever it takes, to close the prospect. Are you like that in your business? Always want to close? I mean, that's the rule ABC. Always be closing. Always be closing. Another question. What do you need or have to get your outcome? So just suppose for a moment that you can have it. Do you know anyone who has it? Have you ever had or done this before? What will happen if you get it? What will you gain? What will you lose? What will not happen if you get it? What will happen if you don't get it? What will not happen if you don't get it? Now, those questions will put people into a process of thinking. And when people are thinking, they're changing their minds. They're changing their thoughts because they're going deeper into their unconscious mind to research more information. Okay? So in addition, you will want to discover their meta programs and values at this time. You will want to ask their direction, their frame of reference, their convincers, their relationship, In addition, you will probably want to know their major criteria of making their purchase or their values around the subject of business. Very important. Did you ever think, or did you ever wonder, why a good idea is a good idea? Think about it. Why a good idea is a good idea? Because it matches someone's values. That's why it's a good idea. If something match your values or match my values, then I would feel it's a good idea. That's why you need to know your customers' values. Now, if necessary, you may also want to know the higher purpose for their current interaction. And if you do, then ask, what purpose does this serve, or for what purpose? So when they tell you what they want, you say, for what purpose? That will give you the values. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but that will give you their values. Now, let's go to step number 3 after we ask questions and we got the information that we need in order to start to design our custom service or product for the client, or how to present our custom presentation to the client and prospect. Okay? Because it's all about the presentation. So step number 3 of the 5-step sale process. And there are 3 parts to this, okay? So step number 3 is establish value. Establish value. And there are 3 parts for this. Number 1, find a need or opportunity. Number 2, establish the value of the solution. And number 3, link the need and the solution. Link the need and the solution. So we are assuming, by the way, that in the process of getting into communication and becoming interested, okay, that you will easily have discovered what the buyer wants. Okay? Because you ask questions, so you discover what they want. For example, somebody walking into a health and fitness center will want to look better, live longer, be healthier. In business of consulting, somebody would want their business to be more profitable. In computer, you need to discover what the buyer really wants. In home improvement, you need to know what they really want and what is their budget and so forth, and why they're doing that, why it's important for them to do that right now. So there is different businesses and different industries, you will ask different questions. That's why we said in step number 2, prepare the list of questions. So I give you suggestions to few questions, but you have to develop the question around your specific business. And if you need help, that's why I'm here. So call 310-409-9220 or visit us at usenlp.com, shoot us a message, and we'll get back to you to help you to develop your structure of selling. That's why we're here. And we have great, not just knowledge, but also experience of being in sales for over 30 years. And I've been selling any product, you name it, I sold it. Okay? So I'm talking from experience. So the process of establishing value begins with the finding the need or opportunity that your product or service can fill. Again, the process of establishing value begins with finding a need or opportunity that your product or service can fill. Assuming that you have discovered the need or opportunity in the process of asking question, you then establish the value of a solution to the problem or opportunity. Finally, you link the value of your product or service to their need. You link the value of your service or product to their need. Okay? Now, this is really important step. The way I like to ask the question, by the way, is, can you see any value for you in, and then whatever it is that you want to ask. Why do I use this wording? Because I want them to see value. Then I use the word, do you see value? If the answer is yes, then it's a $sign next to it. If the answer is no, then I know I have to look for a different route. Because they don't see value in that. So I have to find something else that they will see value in. Does that make sense? Beautiful. Now, suppose that you feel that there are too many people waiting to use the computer, and it's always tied up. You can say, can you see any value to you in having the computer work faster? The question is, can you see any value to you? Because if you see value to you, you will be interested in the product or service, right? If you don't, then even if it's cheap, I don't want it. It's a waste of time. Isn't it? So the results of establishing value. Once you have established the value, you are almost done. The moment they see the value, you will want to anchor it. Set up an anchor linking the value and the need. In fact, you've closed already, but the close is so inconspicuous that it will almost be unnoticed. It's so covered, it will almost be unnoticed. Can you see any value to you in wanting to do this? Is so really marvelous tool. So keep in mind the question, can you see any value to you in wanting to do this? How strong of a question is that? So let's go to step number 4. Close. Ask for the sale. Once you find the need or opportunity and establish the value of the solution, link the need and the solution, and you've anchored it, then close. And there are a number of true techniques, of closing, and we will include here a few of our favorites. Procedure by which you would ask for the order. There are just ways of asking for an order that seems to work. So let's cover that, okay? Because if you're not going to ask them to sign the contract or to write the check, they will not. That's why it's so important also in advertising to have a call to action. You need to tell your prospect and your client what you expect them to do. You should not assume that they know by themselves how to move forward and how to proceed. Always bear in mind that you have to be so clear as if you are talking to a 5-year-old boy that needs to understand the clear instruction of what he needs to do and how to move forward. Does that make sense? Beautiful. So, the order blank close. The first simple involve filling out your order form, the order blank close. If you're using an order blank, okay, that means that you are filling it out as you ask the question on the form. Now, what is your mailing address? So the minute your client see value, the form is filled out. And the next question would be, and when should I deliver it? Or, great, what day would you like to have it installed? Now, for example, your client says he wants to have his computer run faster. You may say, it is your computer or the printer that is making you wait. Now, he says the printer. You say, would there be any value to you in having a printer run faster? Why yes? Well, great. What day would you want me to put in one of our accelerator boards? Would Monday or Tuesday be better? And you give a double bind. So you never leave it open. You give a double bind. You give them to choose from 2 or 3 maximum options. Okay? So you ask, what is better for you, X or Y? When is better for you, X or Y? Morning or afternoons? Because if you just leave it open, then they will have to research. They will have to make harder decisions. Why to make it harder on them? You want to make it easier on them. You want them to lean on you and to trust you fully and follow your lead every moment. Now, most of the successful salespeople, and for sure all the good ones that I know, if they need an order blank when they are selling, they will have it with them. Have it ready. And the minute they get buying signal, will wipe it out and start filling it out. I do that myself, I have contracts that are ready, agreements that are ready, So all it needs to do is just put the date and sign. Easy. Because once a decision was made, I want to jump on the opportunity. Does that make sense? Because once they decided, you don't want them to cool down before signing or placing the order. You want them to feel the excitement. Okay? Now, let's talk about the alternate choice. You may have noticed, that we ask a question above that did not allow for a no answer, called an alternate choice closing question. This question, assume a yes is the only possibility. It is also called a double bind. In using this clause, always give somebody an alternate choice when you are giving him the opportunity to buy something. So have them choose this or this. Always give them. When is better, Monday or Tuesday, morning or evening? Because if you decided to buy from me, do I care if it's in the morning or in the evening? No. Do I care if I install it Monday or Tuesday? No. Do I care if I deliver it this week or next week? No. I care that you bought and paid and that you are happy with the results, with the product, with the service. That's what I care for. That's the only thing I care for. That you, as my client, will be happy with the purchase and with the experience. Now, what it means is that the buyer says, the only time I can have it installed is midnight. So you say, would tonight at midnight or tomorrow at midnight be better? You give double binds. The real professional salesperson will always give somebody an alternate choice. Why? Because then you cannot say no, you have another choice. All right? Now, the alternative choice is also good, by the way, if you are trying to make an appointment, okay? It's very good when you try to make an appointment. So let me come over and demonstrate this machine to you, or this service, or whatever, Would you feel good about Thursday at 2, or would you feel good better on Friday at 3? Did you see what I did? Do you feel good about this or better about that? Either way, I implant in their mind a positive experience and positive wording. Do you see how it works? And like I said in the beginning, persuasion done in small increments. Small increments. Let's talk about the Ben Franklin balance sheet clause. So there is one other specific clause which I like, if somebody is having a real hard time trying to decide, should I get this, should I not, it is the Ben Franklin balance sheet. What you do is you take a piece of paper and you put an I, okay, down the things, and to put yes, and then you go through all the yeses. Why to buy? Why to do? Well, we isolated that the processor runs faster. Spreadsheet, rectangular, faster. You are writing this in, by the way. What you need to do is write about 7 to 8 yeses. All the reasons why he should buy today. Okay? Then you give him the pen and say, all right, now I filled in the yes for you. Why don't you look and see what reason there are that you shouldn't buy? The truth is that he will only be able to discover 2 or 3 reasons not to buy. Now, the way that it works is that if somebody is having a hard time making a decision, gosh, I can't decide, I don't know what to do. I understand how you feel, Mr. Jones. Let me tell you what an old Ben Franklin used to do when he faced with a hard decision. Then you take out what he called the balance sheet. Ben was also an accountant, and he used to make out balance sheet. And on the left side, he put yeses. And under the yes, Ben would list all the things that he could do and all the reason why he should do it. Then on the other side, Ben would list all the reason why not to do it. So you list all the yeses and give him the pen to list all the no's. He will only be able to do 2 or 3. Don't help him with the no's, because what you want is the yeses to outweigh the no's. Does that make sense? If the yes is a list of 8 positive things why to do it, and on the negative no's he has only 2 or 3 reasons, he will make his own decision based on that. Make sense? And that's a great way to close, by the way, on anything. So, have you ever heard terms, when you're selling something? Yeah, I want to think about it. Yes, I want to think about it. And there's one more clause that I want to tell you about. And this is really important, It's the way you handle the I want to think about it. I think it's probably for most salespeople the hardest rebuttal, or the hardest resistant, okay, to have, okay. And it's the I want to think about it clause, or the I want to talk to my partner clause, no matter how you put it, just not to make a decision today. So he put the blame on others. Like, I need to talk to my partner, or I need to think about it, or whatever it is. So that's not really an objection, because it's not specific. So there's no objection, right? There's nothing behind this sentence of I want to think about it. So what they are really trying to do is to get sometimes so they don't have to make a decision right now. That's what this sentence really means. They're trying to buy time, so they don't have to make decision right now. Some people don't like to make decisions, especially not hard ones, especially not about buying, especially not about a high ticket price. But, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, look at this. The direct mail in this country, have discovered that if you don't act on their piece of direct mail within 5 minutes, they've lost you. It's true. And in selling, a client will get cold if you let them think about this long enough. They will get cold. So I would say that once you are in a demonstration, and once you've established value, then there are a couple of things that you can say about, I need to talk to my partner, or I need to think about it. The first thing is that you say, well, are you in favor of it? That is a question. That is the question. You ask him that because if he's talking to someone who is going to talk to someone else about whatever, if he's not in favor of it, then how will it help you for him to go and talk to other person? He will not convince him. So first thing you want to know, are you in favor of it? Now, if he's in favor of it, then you say, good. Go ahead and talk to your partner. Once they are in favor of it, then say, great. Go ahead and talk to your partner and take it from there. Even better than that would be, if you're in favor of it, then let's all three of us get together so that we can all talk about it together. So in other words, get their permission to come and talk to their partner with them. Don't let them do it alone. Ask them, can you arrange a meeting here with you and your partner? Get me together with them. And always give a reason, because sometimes say, no, I'll talk to him, and then I'll give you a call. Yeah, but maybe he will have questions that you didn't think about. I want to be able to answer all your questions, all your concerns, everything. I want you to know exactly what you're getting yourself into and how successful you're going to be in the end. So I want to cover every aspect of it for you and for your partner. The other thing that you can do is that if they have to go talk to somebody, and I've used it in the past, well, I certainly want to buy that from you. But I need to talk to my wife because she always makes decisions with me. That may be real. That may be real. So you say, let's write up an agreement and put down that this agreement is canceled if your wife will not let you do it. Right? Now, if you ask questions by the client and you could answer yes, don't just say yes. Always answer the question with another question. For example, client says, can I have it in red? You say, yes. Would you like it in red? If the answer is yes, then he's bought. If the answer is no, then say, what color would you like? Do you see how you bind them step by step, step by step? Because like I said before, persuasion is done in small increments. Now, request for a proposal, which is also a put-off, okay? If the client requests a proposal. So, here are also some questions that you can ask to get you beyond the request of proposal. So question number 1, for example, is, in addition to you, who are the other decision makers that will be involved in this decision? Because if somebody wants a proposal for what? It's to show to somebody, right? He already got the information, so he can make a decision if he really wants to make a decision. If you're really willing to make a decision, is he really capable of making a decision? And that's a big question. Do your prospect really capable of making a decision at that point? So the question number 2 you can ask is, when can they get together to listen to the presentation of our proposal. So you don't give the proposal. You want to meet with all the decision maker when you deliver the proposal. Does that make sense? Now, what do others want? Can we talk to them and get their input first before we create the proposal? Because if not, then let's say that we're doing a home remodeling and you want to paint the house and they don't, So why should I create a proposal for painting the house if they want to replace the air condition? Or why should I prepare you a proposal for a new computer if your partner only wants to replace the screen, right? So it's not about trying to sell everything we can. It's about listening to what the client really need and give them what they need. This is the service. That's why sell comes from the verb to serve. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, by the way, do you know how important it is to shut up when asking for a closing question? Let's go back and define the closing question, because I've gone through the process of closing, and a closing question is any question that when you ask it, the answer to which, if yes, means they bought it. Okay, that's a closing question. So if I ask you, when do you prefer to meet, Monday or Tuesday? Once you answered, you're sold. If I ask you, do you want to come to the training on Monday or Thursday? Once you answered Monday, then you're sold, aren't you? So those are the type of questions that you want to use. Now, as you can see, actually establishing value in a closing question, it's a trial close, and it's an inconspicuous trial close. So when you ask a closing question, you should always, the minute you've asked it, shut up. Shut up. And you should not talk until they've had the opportunity to say something after you ask the closing question. Now, this concept comes from Douglas Edward, one of the world's famous cell trainer, until his death in the 70s. But I'm not sure if Doug understood the real meaning of how this worked. But it worked. Now, we talked about the 4 steps, and now we're getting to the 5th step, which is handle the objections. And how do you handle the objections? Either by ignoring it and going to step number 3, which is establish value. Because if there is resistance, an objection, that means they don't see enough value. Or you answering the objection and go to number 3, which is establishing value, link the value to the need. Okay? So there are 2 ways of handling the objection that come up. Either you reestablish value, okay? In both of them, you reestablish value. Either you answer or you don't answer the objection, but you have to go to reestablish the value. Now, here's how it works. Your client says, yes, I can see some value. You say, great. You say, great. Let's put an accelerator board in your computer. And he says, well, gosh, I can't afford it right now, or whatever. Then either you answer the objection or you ignore it. One way I would ignore it is by saying, well, gosh, I don't have the time, And you say, well, a moment ago, you told me that you saw value in not having to wait for the printer to finish printing. And that will either get you a sell or another objection. Because you take them back to something that they already saw value in. So either it will get you a sale or it will get you a different objection. And that's the job of a salesperson, to get the objection, handle the objections, because there will be no sale without objections. So objections are a good thing. It's just like when an airplane take off, he has to overcome gravity. I mean, how can such a big piece of metal can overcome gravity? It should fall down from the sky. I mean, gravity is a physics law. But the airplane actually used a different physics law in order not to overcome, to respect gravity. And the force that he used is aerodynamics. And when you use the force of the law of aerodynamics, you can overcome the resistance of the gravity. But you're still going to feel resistance of the turbulence. But guess what? The fact that you have resistance means what? That you are moving forward. That you are moving forward. So resistance is good. There will be no sale without resistance. There will be no sale without objections. So don't lose your temper when you get objection. Like the objection. Understand that you must deal with objections in order to make a sale. And do it with a smile. Don't get anxious about it. Don't lose your calmness. Because then people will see it and will recognize that you're not there to serve, you're not there to sell. Does that make sense? Remember, we're not looking to sell anything to the client. We are looking to serve them, and we want to make them feel that we are the best choice. Because if they will feel we are the best choice, our product, our service, then they will buy without any hesitation, without any resistance. Okay? The job of the salesperson is moving the buyer from resistance to objections. Now, I usually ignore the first objection because the first objection is usually not the real objection, okay? So let's talk for a minute about the buyer resistance and getting a client ready to want to buy what you are selling. Now, between wanting to buy what you are selling, which is there, and buying, which is here, there may be a whole lot of resistance. Now, if you are just being interesting, you may not be interested enough or able, because of lack of rapport, to get him beyond this resistance. And so that the unspoken resistance will never be verbalized because lack of rapport. He will not even share it with you. You need to be interested enough to get him beyond his resistance. Now, that's why I usually ignore the first objection, because the first thing that comes up is usually not the real objection. The first objection is usually not the reason why they are not buying. So you need to move your client beyond his resistance into verbalizing the real objection. One way is to ignore the objection. Like we said, ignore and go to step number 3 of establishing value and linking the value to the need. The second way is answering the objection. Now, if you choose to answer the objection, that is if you think the objection is significant, then you should answer it. And here are the answers, the 4 objections that are to anything, there are only 4. Now, the 4 objections you can hear is, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, it won't work for me, it works for everybody else but not for me, and I don't believe you. So those are the only 4 objections that are for anything, okay? So if the answer is the time, I don't have time, then I don't think it will save time, or I don't have enough time for it. The answer to this is quite simple. Well, what's surprising? That's surprising, Mr. Jones, since I am talking to you about saving your time. What I'm proposing is about saving you time. That's what it's all about. Saving you time. So your job as a salesperson, you see, is 80% of your prospects have already visualized having your product in their mind. Then 80% of the time you should have a sale. Did you hear me? 80% of the time you should have a sale. Let me make it easier for you. 50% of the time you should have a sale. If you are interested, not interesting. If you are listening, not pitching. If you ask question, not pushing. Beautiful. So those are the 5-step sales process, and there's more to talk about. Answer to money, I don't have enough money, but all those handling objection, I'm sure you already know how to handle it in your business, if you offer finance or not offering finance, all of those things. So if you have question about how to handle more objections, okay, and how to close more in your specific business, by all means, we are here. usenlp.com, 310-409-9220. Just give us a call, shoot us a message, shoot us an email. We will help you to increase your bottom line. So if you really care about your business, call now, 310-409-9220. Thank you and see you next time. Have a lovely evening. Go make some sales. Bye-bye.